see comments on the internet from people who say they would like to get into casting their own useful objects from lead. Fishing sinkers, for example. But they say, I can't really afford to right now, and one of these days I'm going to get into it. And usually some people will reply to them and say, oh, it's not that bad. You can buy a 110 volt melting pot for around $45 or $50, and you can get a dipper for whatever, $20 or something like that, and so on. And you can put maybe $200 or $300 into it and get started in casting your own lead objects. Okay, that's all well and good. And people say, yeah, I understand it's only a couple of $100, but I can't spare that much right now. Okay, I'm going to tell you how to get started casting your lead objects on a hobo budget. And so, next to nothing. And I'm going to let you in on a few secrets about that. And some people might say, no, that won't work. You can't do that. But the fact of the matter is, it does work. I have done it. And in fact, I started out doing something similar to that when I first started casting my own lead objects a long time ago, 30 plus years ago, I guess. So let's get started. So you need something to contain and melt the lead in, and you need something. You need a heat source to melt it. All right, so here's a heat source. You're going to want to do this, melting lead. You're going to want to do it probably outdoors anyway. Definitely someplace where you have plenty of cross ventilation. But since this is hobo style, we're going to be doing it outdoors, which takes care of the ventilation for sure. But it's possible to do it in a garage. You can come up with ways to do that, or in a shed or whatever. So you don't need some super special means of generating heat. Here are some bricks, and rocks work just fine too. Rocks are free. They're everywhere. Bricks can be free. These were. But just be careful and make sure you don't use river rocks, because they can explode under the heat. So here are some charcoal briquettes. And yes, charcoal briquettes cost a little bit, but these are Royal Oak brand, which, if I'm remembering right, I think that's Walmart brand. But anyway, you don't have to go buy charcoal briquettes if you truly are. Now, a hobo pretty much always has some way of making a little bit of money here and there, so that he can go to the dollar store and get a few items and so on. But there are also ways of scrounging everything you need. And we're going to, and if you got one of these, you can just use that. You might not even need the charcoal briquettes. But you don't have to have this. It makes it easier, but it's not necessary. But you can get the type that doesn't have the automatic lighter arrangement, just a simple valve type propane burner for just, I don't know, less than $10 probably. But like I said, you don't necessarily have to have that. And you don't have to have the charcoal briquettes. You can use a few little pieces of firewood, small firewood, like just some little twigs, and break them up and stack them right here. Now, what you're going to want to find to melt the lead in is a steel soup can. That's all you need. Make sure it's steel. Aluminum would probably melt, burn a hole in it or whatever. But most of the soup cans are steel anyway. And this one is a 19-ounce can. Alright, of course, you're going to need a source of lead. And great thing would be if you could scrounge some lead. And I've scrounged lots of lead. There are still places where you can scrounge it. You can also buy it. And some people melt it down, cast it into various things, and cast it into ingots, you know, in various things. And one of the cheap ways to do that is in a muffin pan. And that's how this has been done. And so you can find that stuff for sale if you don't have any luck scrounging some. So you just drop that in the can, and you're going to need some kind of ladle to stir it, and also to ladle it out. Okay, so just a cheap stamped steel teaspoon. You might be able to scrounge one of those. Sometimes people throw these things away when they buy some nicer ones. But I think you can go to the dollar store or whatever and buy some of these cheap ones for, like, I don't know, maybe 25 cents each or something like that. And if you don't already have one, get a couple of them. That way you can eat your soup with it or whatever. You know, if you really are living the hobo life. Maybe get you a can of soup, a couple of spoons, because you don't want to reuse your lead spoon for eating. But anyway, this is a teaspoon, and I looked up how much is a teaspoon, how much weight in lead does a teaspoon hold. And a teaspoon is about 5 milliliters approximately. And a milliliter and a cc are the same thing. And basically, a teaspoon of lead weighs over 700 grains. That's the bottom line. So, if you've got a mold for something that is, say, an ounce or less, because an ounce is 437.5 grains. So you can actually cast something up to an ounce with what this holds, and have a little bit left over, which you need a little bit left over for your, you need to kind of overfill your mold a little bit so that as it shrinks, it'll have a pool to draw from, so you won't have voids in your fishing sinker. So anyway, it would be better though to get tablespoons. You can still eat with tablespoons. I do anyway. I prefer a tablespoon to eat with. And it holds 3 times as much as this. So you can get by with a teaspoon. Tablespoon is better. You can also get the little stainless steel coffee scoops pretty cheaply. Not as cheaply as a cheap spoon, but pretty cheap. I'll say maybe $1 and those hold about 30 milliliters, so way more than you'll need. You could even have a 6 cavity mold for fishing sinkers, and you could probably do all of them with a coffee scoop, stainless steel coffee scoop, so that would make a good ladle. But a spoon works, especially if you've just got a single cavity fishing sinker mold. Okay, one thing about it, that handle's going to get hot, so you need to wrap it with something. You can wrap it with a leather shoelace or whatever, but we're going to do something a little bit different. And we're going to go ahead and get started with this. Now that can is going to outgas a little bit as it heats up, so keep your face away from it. And of course you don't want to breathe lead fumes either, but you're not going to, because lead doesn't make lead fumes until it starts boiling, and it does not boil at any temperature that we'll be able to reach here. So while that's going on, and I'll probably use the propane torch a little more, but you don't have to. It'll just take more time if you just use charcoal or firewood or whatever. But while that's going on, I cut myself a little stick. And since hobos don't have power tools usually, I used my Swiss Army knife, my Swiss Champ. And now that's pretty expensive, but I tell you what, that's an awesome tool for a hobo to have. But if he doesn't have one, if he doesn't have anything that nice, pretty much any knife will work. But so I cut a chunk about the right size for a handle, and I'm just going to work on it a little bit while the charcoal gets going. Okay, now if you do decide to make a handle for your spoon by slotting a stick, be careful. Whether you use a knife or whatever, knife or saw. I used the saw in my Swiss Army knife, and I did actually spring a little leak in my thumb while I was doing it, so that's why you got to be careful. Now that's not perfect, but it'll probably work. And here's another thing you might be able to scrounge. You can tell by looking at it that I scrounged that one. I've scrounged a bunch of them. Just a hose clamp. So, let's see. Let me turn it around this way. You got to kind of put it in such a way that that it's not going to interfere with handling it, since it is, after all, a handle. So kind of get it started, but don't squeeze it down too far yet. I've done this too for a long time. I mean, I actually have casting ladles now. Well, I have one. I think I might have had another at some point, but I don't know what happened to it. But these are so useful that I still use them to this day. In fact, this particular spoon, I had a handle on it before, and I don't know what happened to the handle. I guess it fell off at some point. But this is a spoon that I've used for casting lead and continue to use for casting lead. And you can hold it with a pair of pliers. You can, like I said, you can wrap a leather shoestring or something around it, or you can hold it with gloves, or you can just, as I usually do, just use it for a short amount of time and try to not let it have enough time to get hot. But if you're going to actually be using it as a ladle instead of just to stir and flux your lead, then you're going to need to have a handle on it. Still leaking. What did I do with that paper towel? Nope, that's not the right one. Well, it'll work. Got to blot out the leakage. Okay, so another thing you're going to need is a little bit of wax. Okay, that is, I don't know if you can see it or not, but it's somewhat liquid, but it's not super liquid. So what we're going to do is throw this to it. It's pretty chilly out here, so a little bit of extra heat would be a good thing. Of course, if you really were living the life of a hobo, you would want to have a bigger fire, and what you would do is just rake some coals over to one side and set your can in it. But if you're doing this just for a cheap way to cast some lead objects, then you might be doing it this way. And if you're doing it this way, surely you can afford a propane torch. Or you can, you know, still just build a bigger fire, put more charcoal briquettes on. But we're going to do it the quick way. once it's fully liquid, and I'm going to turn the torch back on in a minute. It got pretty much fully liquid, but I'm going to turn it back on. But you're going to need to flux it. And for that, you need another item, and that is a candle. The candle can be scrounged or bought, because all you need is just a small amount of wax scraped off of it. And this actually is from a scrounged candle. And when you do this, be careful, because you certainly don't have your face above the can, because it's probably going to burst into flames. What this does is you're going to stir it in, and like I said, be careful, because it will almost certainly burst into flames. So when it does, don't worry about it, just let it burn out, but keep stirring it. And so what you want to do is stir it and bring the dross to the top, the dirt and everything to the top, and pull them over to one side and scoop it out with a spoon, because what you're doing is cleaning the lead. You discard that stuff somewhere. This is a sardine can. I'm going to discard it. Yeah, it looks like it's fully liquid. So let's go ahead and flux it. Always startles me, but as you can see, it goes out right away. And the lead will be nice and shiny. Scrape that stuff off. Okay. Now, we've got a mold here to cast a round ball. Just a round ball, about approximately 1/3 of an inch in diameter. So if you have anything you might, find useful about having a round lead ball, that's a good way to do it. This is an aluminum mold. You want to preheat your mold. You can do it with the torch or in the coals, or dip it into the lead or whatever. And dip out some lead. Wow, boy, it's going to be hard to get it. Okay. Could use it as a ladle, I guess you gotta be in there. Now it's a ladle. And there it is. A perfect lead ball. And that, my friends, is how it's done on the cheap. Yeah, because I use this spoon for stirring and fluxing, but not so much as a ladle because I have another ladle. It never occurred to me that I wasn't going to be able to do that. Now, if you've got a pair of pliers, you can grab the edge of the can, tip it up, and be able to get in there. But you can also just do what I just did and bend it so that you can reach in there. So that'll work. Thanks for watching.